So let's bring in Thom Brooks. He is a professor of law and government at Durham University. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
So not long now, and we will know what Britain's Supreme Court has decided on Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament. If the court rules against him, what needs to happen next?
Well, if they find against him, it will be, I think, a real blow to Boris Johnson, because it would have confirmed that the Prime Minister misled the Queen in requesting that she suspend Parliament, effectively that he lied to her. And it would really provoke a constitutional crisis. In normal circumstances, a Prime Minister would resign at the mere thought that he or she might have done so. And I think that his position will get pretty close to untenable, if not untenable, if he loses today. It will be a massive blow to him. Parliament would have to reconvene, effectively, right away.
And what's the sense that you're getting? Do you get any sense this will go either way?
I don't know, frankly, another kind of lawyer, legal commentator that thinks the government will win. We all think the government will lose this case. Their argument was pretty weak, saying that they needed this longest, as you heard Jeremy Corbyn say, the longest break of 300 years in order to put together a speech for the Queen to read out on their legislative agenda. Typically, this is just a few days as a kind of a formal break from one session of Parliament before the next one. It's never required really a week, let alone several weeks to do. And the court, in questioning the government, seemed pretty brutal in their takedown of a number of their arguments. They were really taken by their opponents, who said if the government was able to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks to suit their agenda, what's to stop them from doing it for 5 months or 5 years if they couldn't get their way in Parliament? And that seemed the wrong way around, because Parliament is sovereign, not the government. Government is Parliament. So we all expect the government will lose.
Interesting. And Labor leader Jeremy Corbyn, as we just heard, told CNN that if the Supreme Court does rule that the suspension of Parliament was unlawful, he would demand Parliament be recalled and the suspension lifted. But that's all he says about it. And given lawmakers will have less than 30 business days to figure this all out before the October 31st deadline, does a no-deal Brexit look inevitable at this time?
I don't think it looks inevitable quite yet. I mean, one thing that was true throughout Theresa May's troubled tenure trying to get any type of Brexit deal through Parliament is that members of Parliament at the moment are not united on much. But the one thing that brings pretty much all of them together is their opposition to a no-deal Brexit. That's the one thing that always gets a majority and has consistently done so. And I think, and that is why it's been alleged that Boris Johnson wanted to suspend Parliament to try to stop Parliament from being able to get in his way of delivering, or at least the threat of a no deal. So I think that while there won't be much time, it's the only vote that we can expect Parliament will stand up to the Prime Minister and stop. And remember, this is a Prime Minister that does not have a majority in Parliament. He's in a minority group, and a lot of his actions over the last few weeks, and only his first few weeks as Prime Minister, he's lost every vote in Parliament so far and driven away what working majority he's had. So I think that if Boris Johnson loses today, it will be a real problem for him to get anything done at all until a general election, and I think could well be curtains for him.
Right. Of course, we reported too that the Labor Party voted down a proposal Monday that would have put it in the Remain camp and instead moved to negotiate a new Brexit deal and leave it up to voters to choose between the New Deal or remaining in the EU. What's the strategy behind that? And will Labor voters buy it, do you think, and other voters?
Well, I've come down to Brighton. I was in the hall for that debate and its result. It's a difficult one. I think that the strategy that seemed to have won the day on the floor was that Labour should try to unite the country. The country was very much divided between Leave and Remain, and so they thought it was a mistake to go for, on the one side, think that the Tories have been wrong to go for a no-deal option that was never part of the referendum deal, think that's not something that has a mandate. On the other side, those who've been wanting to revoke Article 15 and Brexit altogether without going to the people, they thought that was also something that hasn't had much of a democratic mandate. And they think that a so-called people's vote, a second referendum, is the only way to go about it. Not on Theresa May's deal, but they seem to be confident that they would be able to do something themselves. They've been a bit unclear about what that something else would be, saying only that over the last several months that they've been having their own negotiations with Brussels, and were pretty confident that they would have a different deal to offer to voters. The most controversial part of the plan was that Labour was not right now committing itself to being for Remain if they were to put a leave, a new Brexit option versus staying in the European Union to voters. Remain is very popular with Labour members, though the country is itself divided. At the moment, Labour is not committing one way or the other and leaving it to voters to decide. How well that strategy plays out, we'll find out soon, I'm sure.
We shall, and we'll also find out in just over 3 hours from now the outcome from the Supreme Court. So we'll keep a very close eye on that. Many thanks to you, Thom Brooks.
Pleasure.